Tonight, the city comes together to mourn the victims in the Ukrainian Airlines crash.
Everybody in that plane was somebody's daughter, somebody's son, somebody's sister, somebody's brother.
This vigil in North York, just one of many held across the country tonight. Plus,
there's no other options on the table for us.
in a last-ditch effort to get the government's attention, Ontario elementary teachers threaten rotating strikes. And Torontonians brave the cold and flock to Nathan Phillips Square as the Leafs hold their second annual outdoor practice. Good evening, I'm Mike Wise. On a night many in our city are still trying to come to terms with the loss of so many lives in that Ukrainian Airlines flight comes another horrific complication. The plane may have been shot down by Iran.
We have intelligence from multiple sources, including our allies and our own intelligence. The evidence indicates that the plane was shot down by an Iranian surface-to-air missile.
But the Prime Minister says it may well have been unintentional. Everyone on board that plane was killed, including 138 people traveling to Canada, 63 of whom were Canadian citizens. Now, Trudeau says Canada is calling for and wants to be part of a credible investigation into the crash. And tonight, the Transportation Safety Board confirming their Iranian counterparts have invited Canadian investigators to at least attend the crash site. They say they have accepted that invitation. And tonight, we have disturbing video that appears to show the moment the missile hit the plane. Now, that is video verified by the New York Times. CBC News has not independently verified the recording. In it, you can see that flash of light, and then about 10 seconds later, you can hear a boom. The Times says the jet did not immediately explode. Instead, it kept flying for several minutes on fire, trying to return to the Tehran airport before it eventually crashed. This video is now part of growing evidence that it was an Iranian missile that brought it down. And as Torontonians try to process the news, they also continue to grieve, mourning the lives lost. Tonight, there were two vigils, people from across the GTA coming together to show their support.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. We are saddened and grieving for devastating loss that our community, the Canadian and Iranian community, had for many lives that we had lost.
What's there to say is what I'm asking myself. And I pray we never have to revisit this place of pain again.
This is people gathering after prayers at the Imam Ali Islamic Center on Bermondsey Road tonight. And earlier, a large crowd gathered at the North York Civic Center. Arkelda Yoon was there.
Flowers and photos of loved ones lined the table as mourners marked a moment of silence to honor them.
Everybody in that plane was somebody's daughter, somebody's son, somebody's sister, somebody's brother.
Some of those who knew them took the stage to speak of them and the unfathomable loss. Toronto has the second largest Iranian population outside of Iran. More than 24 of those who lost their lives were from the GTA.
Everybody, is somehow affected.
Pentea Hajian still can't believe the little boy she tutored, Rostin, and his mom, Shakiba Fagahati, are gone.
And they went to Iran for vacation after 6 years. What was really tragic was that they could never make it back. He was a cheerful little boy, and he always had big dreams, and he wants to be so successful to make his parents proud.
Shahram Shabazz Panahi is a professor at Ontario Tech University in Oshawa. One of his most memorable students, Razgar Rahimi, was on the flight along with his son and pregnant wife.
He went back for 3 weeks to visit and he was coming back to get landed and start a new job, a new life here in Canada.
Like many here, for him, the vigil not just a way to honor the victims, but to cope.
That's the only way I can I can be sure that I can go through the grieving process for this loss.
The vigil held just hours after news that an Iranian missile was the likely cause of the crash.
I was really, really hoping that that wasn't the news, and that was, I guess, was the last bullet that it's so hard.
I think it was always in the back of people's head that the situation might have been that the crash might have been the result of violence, and it seems to be that is the case. I think regardless, what all Iranian Canadians want is peace in the region.
In the meantime, the mourning continues. Kelda Yoon, CBC News, Toronto.
2 of the crash victims are being remembered tonight for their academic work and ability to bring out the best in others. Zainab and Mohammed Asadilari ran an academic club for students specializing in science, technology, engineering, and math. The brother and sister team were also mental health advocates for students working in that demanding field. As Ali Chasson tells us, many are struggling to come to terms with their loss.
She was a scientist from the beginning, especially the questions she asked. A lot of students might ask, is this question going to be on the test? Whereas she would be asking questions like, why does this process work? And why doesn't it happen this way? And she was always asking why.
Now, anyone lucky enough to have met fourth-year biology major Zainab Asadilari or her scholarly brother Mohammed are left asking why them.
This is where she used to sit. I always thought she was the kind of student who would either make it to med school or something like that, and she had that personality in her.
Zainab followed in her older brother Mohammed's footsteps. He was a doctor as well as a PhD candidate.
Because the whole point,
and he was more than just his impressive resume. His colleagues say his legacy will be measured by all of the students he inspired throughout his life. Mohammed Asadilari encouraged many to think beyond their microscopes, like Ahmed Hassan.
And he saw potential in me that frankly I didn't. He inadvertently is the reason I'm doing a PhD now, which was something I dreamed of.
When did you find out?
Yesterday, I was actually in the middle of lab work. I was like, all right, I'm gonna be in there for a little bit. And then I pulled up my phone just to aimlessly scroll on social media, and then I just saw words that I did not feel I should be reading. Rest in peace. My friend, Mohammed Asadilari, was on this plane. I was just reading those words, and I was like, this can't be happening. This guy just started yelling, no. Yeah, that really, it kind of hit me like a truck. Yeah.
It makes you think of how there's more to life than the lab. It kind of opens up your eyes, makes you step back a little bit and look at your life in general.
As professors, one of our greatest joys is watching students pursue their dreams and fight through adversity and reach those dreams. And it makes me immensely sad that Zainab won't have the chance to do that. It's a huge loss for academia, and we learn so much from each other in this global campus. And whenever that is diminished in some way, it's a huge loss for everyone, not just those scholars, because you lose the opportunity to learn from each other.
That report was by our Ali Chasson. We have a full list of victims with tributes to each one on our website. You can find it at cbc.ca/Toronto. We'll have more coverage of the crash a little later in this newscast. Well, turning to some of the other top stories in our city today, if you have children in elementary schools, you might want to start thinking about childcare plans. The union representing elementary teachers is warning that if it can't reach a settlement with the government, it will start a series of rotating strikes.
If we don't have a deal by January the 17th, Friday, January the 17th, on Monday the 20th, we are going to implement rotating strikes across the province.
Of course, that is what the high school teachers union has been doing, most recently yesterday in Peel region. ETFO is promising to give parents 5 days notice, but won't say how or which schools or boards might be targeted or when. In the meantime, elementary teachers will stop participating in extracurricular activities next week. The union says a lack of progress at the bargaining table left it with no choice but to escalate its job action. Ontario's Ombudsman is launching an investigation into growing delays at the Landlord and Tenant Board. This comes after a rash of complaints about the slow pace of eviction hearings. Last month, CBC News revealed that wait times at the province's rental tribunal have reached record lengths. The Ombudsman has received dozens of complaints from landlords and tenants in recent months. Today, Paul Dubé announced a special investigation into the board. He says the probe will focus on whether the Ford government is doing enough to address the issue. Tenant groups worry the province wants to make it easier for landlords to evict without a hearing at the board. And if you're still carrying around one of those old cracked and crumbling red and white Ontario health cards, the government says time is up. Queen's Park has set July 1st as the date the cards will no longer be accepted. There are still about 300,000 of them still in circulation, but you can't complain you weren't warned about this. The government first announced the phase out more than 25 years ago. The health minister says the old cards are more susceptible to fraud than newer cards, which feature a photo and signature. Colette Kennedy's here with her first look at the forecast. I know it's just Thursday night, Colette, but we've got a lot to talk about in terms of what's happening this weekend.
Oh boy, Mike, do we ever. That's right. We have this special weather statement in place from Environment Canada, particularly for Saturday, but this storm is going to straddle a few days here. It's still a few days out. As it gets closer, the event gets closer, we'll likely see some watches and warnings coming out. But for now, it's just to know that we're looking at heavy rain, the potential for freezing rain and some ice pellets, and also snow, although that, of all things, should be on the lighter side. Of all of these, the heavy rain is the one that seems the most certain. We get into a little bit of a question with some of that, the freezing rain and the ice pellets, just in terms of where that's going to fall and for how long. I'll show you how it plays out. Now, just as we go overnight tonight into tomorrow, milder air moving in. This is air that's coming up from the Gulf, but it's got a lot of moisture from the Gulf as well. Really, through Friday, it's kind of some showers sort of off and on and some drizzle. There'll be breaks in the precipitation, in fact. Overnight Friday, though, into Saturday is when the heavier rains move in. They'll be more consistent. Winds will be picking up as well. And then it's going to be later in the day, not necessarily for cottage country, it's earlier, but later in the day down towards the GTA that we could see the freezing rain and the ice pellets and some ice accumulation as well. With the heavy rain first and the ground frozen, there are problems with flooding there, and then ice with a little bit of snow on top obviously makes travel conditions, will make them very, very poor as we're going Saturday into Sunday. Things do improve, though, Sunday, although it will be a windy day. So tonight, the temperature rising. Tomorrow, it's really not that busy in terms of the storm system. It's not till tomorrow night we begin to feel the effects. But 8 degrees, Mike, tomorrow afternoon. Very mild air that's coming with this one. A lot more detail is coming up.
Lots to get through. Okay, thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
All the experts tell us that if we want to get off fossil fuels to solve the problem of climate change, we need to basically electrify most of our economy, including transportation.
Toronto's push to go green on the roads. After the break, how the city plans to boost electric vehicle ownership. Well, Toronto officials are hoping to boost electric vehicle usage in our city. Right now, more than 99% of cars in Toronto are traditional gas guzzlers. And as City Hall reporter Lauren Pelly tells us, it's going to take some bold moves to get those EV numbers up.
Here we go.
When Marwan El Asfahani starts his car, it barely makes a sound. For the Leslieville resident, it's a daily reminder that his electric ride is keeping one more gas guzzler off Toronto's streets.
I save about $550 approximately a month on gas. I pay about $22 in extra electricity a month on my car from my charging.
Owning a Tesla means he also gets to enjoy a touchscreen control deck and in-car karaoke.
We're far from the shallow now.
But those bells and whistles aren't why El Asfahani bought an electric car.
Eventually, this is going to be the way to go, and I want to get involved in doing my share for the environment.
The city is hoping more people follow his lead. A new electric car strategy calls for Toronto to go gas-free by 2050. But right now, only around 6,300 Toronto drivers are using electric cars. Officials hope the city can handle at least 220,000 plug-in vehicles by the next decade.
All the experts tell us that if we want to get off fossil fuels to solve the problem of climate change, we need to basically electrify most of our economy, including transportation.
The strategy says making that happen means calling for more support from higher levels of government, like financial incentives for people who make the switch. In Ontario, the Ford government scrapped a major rebate, and some advocates say that stalled electric car sales. It also means changing the way Toronto was designed for decades.
This is the type of infrastructure the city needs more of, these electric vehicle charging stations right out on the street. But this particular one outside City Hall was years in the making, and it's still not open yet.
So we have to have available charging platforms. We have to have the hydro infrastructure to make sure it can deliver the electricity that we need.
This councillor says getting it all built in a few decades isn't impossible.
It's very ambitious, but if we fund it properly, the political will is there.
El Asfahani hopes that means more people will experience an all-electric ride in the years to come.
I feel that everybody should do their part in terms of the environment in whatever regards they can, whether it's taking transit, buying an electric car, walking.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
A Brampton City Councillor is feeling vindicated after she stood up for some residents who wanted to put a slow down sign on their lawns, but were told they couldn't.
And now that we have a legal opinion that says the signs are legal, the residents are right, and the city's wrong for threatening to charge the residents.
Brampton Councillor Charmaine Williams says the dispute started back in August when she gave out about 500 of these lawn signs reminding drivers to slow down in school zones. But some residents who put up the signs got a visit from bylaw officers who told them they could face fines. In some cases, the signs were removed by city officials. But now that a lawyer says the city was in the wrong, Williams is calling for an apology to residents. You're looking at a live shot of downtown Toronto tonight. Call it the calm before the storm. We've got a potentially messy mix of weather coming our way. Colette is back after the break to break it all down.
The weather update is brought to you by Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. It's hard to stop a train.
Carla Kennedy's back with her extended forecast, and we've got that big storm coming our way. I'll let you go get right to it. Let us know what we can expect.
Sure, Mike. Let me break it down for you so you kind of have an idea. I know it's a weekend. There's things to do, places you've got to go. Sort of, if you were trying to plan around it, like the worst part of the storm, it appears, for the GTA will be late on Saturday. It's not nice before that with heavy rain and wind, but the part where we get into some ice and maybe freezing rain, that's more late Saturday and overnight Saturday into Sunday. So kind of keep that in mind as you're planning. But when I'm talking about heavy rain, 40 to 50 millimeters. Portions of southwestern Ontario, though, it could be more than that. It could be approaching 70 millimeters of rain. Frozen ground, so then we get into some issues with flooding. That's certainly a concern. And then late Saturday with the changeover, then we're talking about some slick roadways, especially any ones that may have not been treated, or sidewalks, that kind of thing. So that's travel very adverse in terms of the conditions when it is slippery like that. Windy on the backside of this, so any ice accretion, then you have to start thinking about, well, are those winds, if there's the limbs on trees getting heavy from the ice, is the wind going to pull those down? Are they going to hit power lines? Those are the kind of things just to be mindful of, and maybe checking around your house and your property, and just make sure that things are kind of clear and looking okay for this. As it moves in, what we see are the temperatures beginning to come up, so they get milder through the overnight tonight and certainly through the day tomorrow. If there's a day to try and enjoy the milder air, well, I guess it's tomorrow, because the precipitation will be lighter in nature, so somewhat spotty, off and on, drizzle, some breaks, but it gets heavy as we go Friday night into Saturday. These heavy rains push on through, move right on through southern and eastern Ontario. Then we get into, not necessarily near the north shore of Lake Ontario or Lake Erie, but just further north around the 407, even potentially the 401, up into cottage country, is where we get into some of that ice accretion, freezing rain and sleet in there, and then it moves out on Sunday, but it does leave some very breezy conditions behind. A look at some of the rainfall potential totals. This is still a few days out, but just something to keep in mind that we could be seeing some areas, some significant amounts around London. I think this is a bit of an exaggeration, but just something to keep being mindful of. And Mike will tweak this a little further as I look at the data and we go into Friday.
Okay, thanks a lot, Colette.
You're welcome.
Down here, skipping school and watching his favorite players play some hockey.
You've never been able to meet any of the players. No. Hoping to change that today.
Yes. Oh, the Leafs held a practice in the good old and cold outdoors. Fans braving some frigid temperatures to watch the Buds on ice outside City Hall. They brought some surprise guests with them. We'll have more on that after the break. It was a rare treat for Leafs fans today. The team held a practice that was open to fans and in the open air. The Leafs skated on the outdoor rink at Nathan Phillips Square this afternoon while thousands of fans watched. Greg Ross was one of the fans, and he was also there.
The passes were crisp, and so was the winter air. But a little cold weather wasn't going to keep these fans from seeing their favorite Leafs up close and in person, like this little boy, who before today had only seen them on TV.
So what is it like seeing them in person?
It's really cool to see them play like this close, so I can see how their skills.
It's his birthday tomorrow, so we're down here skipping school and watching his favorite players play some hockey.
It was rare access for hardcore Leaf fans. In fact, this man got a little more than he had bargained for.
The puck came over the boards there and knocked me right there.
But he wore the bump on his head like a badge of honor after realizing who gave it to him.
I was told by one of the officers there that it was Austin Matthews that shot it, so.
He got to keep the puck and managed to get former Leaf Curtis Joseph to autograph this tattoo on his arm.
Would you get Austin Matthews to autograph the lump on your face? No.
This little girl did want an autograph from Matthews on her jersey.
You've never been able to meet any of the players?
No.
Hoping to change that today?
Yes.
It wasn't just the fans who seemed to enjoy this break from the norm. It comes at a time when a lot has been going well for the Leafs.
Here's Mitch Marner, spins and deals, Matthews again scores!
But also on the heels of a second straight loss.
It's a different feel. The puck feels different, sounds different, the skates sound different.
You know, we're grateful for how many fans come to these events and how many fans we get to interact with.
It was difficult to find anyone who wasn't enjoying themselves, but we did find one person.
Do you like doing stuff like this when you play?
No, I was a goalie, so this cold, the puck actually freezes and it really hurts.
Look at him, he's still cold today. He's cold now.
Yeah, no, these are more fun days for us forwards.
Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
Well, that's our show for you tonight. As we told you earlier, people came together tonight for a vigil at the North York Civic Center to honor those killed in the Ukrainian Airlines crash in Iran. Now, people also gathered outside in Mel Lastman Square to light candles and leave messages of support. We'll leave you now with some of those images. I'll see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Good night.